Hey everybody, it's Jay Wanacott again, continuing this series as we deal with the COVID-19 pandemic and how this impacts our family lives and just to how it's impacting how we live everyday life. And it's a real pleasure to introduce Gina Schmidt. Gina works in our Catholic health ministry outreach, and she's also a faith community nurse here in our diocese. And welcome, Gina.
Thank you very much, Jay. Thanks for having me on here with you.
Gina, for those who don't know, maybe you could share a little bit about what you have been doing the last
Mhm.
few years in the diocese, kind of your role as a faith community nurse, and maybe someone who's not familiar with that term could learn more about what it is.
Okay, so I'm going to go backwards then, and I'm going to start with faith community nursing and what that is. And it's a specialty of nursing for registered nurses. So people that are already licensed and have a current active license can seek training, additional training. Right now it's about 38 hours of additional training in the area of faith community nursing, which is serving in faith organizations, but not always just in churches. It could be any type of community setting where a um, faith-based way of doing things is allowed. For example, the thing that makes us unique is that we are able to care for the whole person, mind, soul, and body. So I've been a faith community nurse for about 18 years now, but I've been working with the Diocese of Boise for about 5 years in a part-time capacity as a health ministry development coach. And what that means is the primary goal is to um, help our parishes to determine, first of all, if they need a health ministry, and let them know the ways that a health ministry can benefit them and how it will help their priests and the rest of their pastoral staff to give more care to their parishioners. And I also am available to assist with providing first aid clinics, health clinics for large functions in the diocese, for private consultation, and for projects.
I think one of the things that maybe people don't know is how involved the faith community nursing community
Mhm.
has been on our larger events in the diocese. We just unfortunately had ICYC, our Catholic Youth Conference, canceled, but in years past, you've been really a part of that in terms of getting that organized in terms of the health care of all of the people who come to that. Is that true?
For about a decade, another faith community nurse and I have been coordinating the health clinic for Idaho Catholic Youth Conference, and that usually draws between 1,500 and 2,000 people. So it is quite a big responsibility, and we do all the scheduling. We ensure everybody's background checks are done in their safe environment, and we're there to assist and keep everything. We have supplies that we keep at the diocese, and we keep those stocked throughout the year. We do that for ICYC, and we also do that for our junior high conferences, and any camps. Sometimes we've been asked to do those. So we're just there to help when we're needed.
Yeah. Well, one of the things we've been talking about a lot is the spiritual impact of this, but I think it's important for us to also think about this physical impact, actually the medical aspect
Mhm.
of this COVID-19 outbreak and what's actually happening. I really forgot to ask you how this has actually impacted your own family life, and maybe we can start there, and then you could share with our listeners what is this COVID pandemic that we're experiencing, and why is it so contagious, and why are we taking these precautions that we are? There's three questions right there that we could unpack, but maybe start with your own experience and then help me understand what it is that we're actually facing in terms of
Mhm.
the physicality of what happens to somebody if they get this
Mhm.
particular disease.
Okay. Yeah. So in our physical home, there are four of us here. My husband and I and our two teenage boys. So we have had a school tradition of homeschooling since the oldest, who is a senior, was in kindergarten. but we had transitioned to a hybrid school in the Boise area. So the boys are used to being home about 4 days a week on average. They're handling it fairly well. My husband was able to transition to working at home. I was able to transition to working at home, and the boys' schooling as a school. I also teach there. We got right on it and started to figure out how we're going to be able to teach these kids while they're at home. And so that's been a fairly easy transition, but a very large learning curve, having to learn a lot of new technology and a little bit more in-depth information about how to use that technology. We have one extroverted child,
Mhm.
and this is hardest for him, but these online meeting platforms they're a mental health lifesaver,
Mhm.
certainly. And it lifts our spirits when we're able to get together. Our school had an entire assembly yesterday with about 50 people online on a meeting, and you could see them all if you have the gallery view. And we had our 15-minute assembly together, just like they're used to having. Keeping those schedules or creating new consistent schedules is really helpful.
That's great. So let's jump in a little bit and from the
Hmm.
medical aspect of this. Can you talk about what this COVID-19 is
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
how it's impacting people?
So viruses are not considered living things on their own anymore, but because they require they can't live without a host at all. So, but what they can do is they can transmit from one living thing to another. Some of them transmit from an animal to a person. Some of them transmit from animal to animal. And then at some point, a lot of them will go from animal to person, and then there'll be community transmission, which means that people are passing it to people. And so COVID-19 is just a title for a type of coronavirus. So now forever I'm wondering the stigma that that term is going to have. But um, colds are also a member of the coronavirus. The
Hmm.
corona simply means crown, and it actually comes from how the virus looks.
Okay.
But it's necessary for a virus to live and to reproduce to have a host. So,
And what do people
mhm,
experience if they actually catch
yeah,
this COVID virus, I guess?
yeah, it is such a huge um, variation of degree. There are some people who can actually can actually have just the mildest of symptoms that would seem like a minor cold. A lot of folks, it seems like a majority, feel almost like they have a flu, but it is not a flu virus. That's a different type of virus, but they have those same feelings: the fever, the chills, the aches. Some folks will have a dry cough. The There are some symptoms that are require seeking medical help, and I take a look at those. It looks like they kind of updated them recently. Trouble breathing, persistent pain or pressure in the chest, any new confusion someone's experiencing, or if you're not able to arouse that person, and bluish lips or face, which would of course indicate that they're not getting enough oxygen. So if you have someone in your life or you're starting to experience those things right now, it's time to notify your medical professional, or take a look and see. There's a lot of different clinics that are specifically designated to be used for this COVID virus. It's highly contagious, and so that's the problem, and that's why we're all at home getting together online, is because of how contagious this particular virus is.
And it seems to have this respiratory dynamic, right? It has to do with a respiratory disorder that can really lead to some serious complications, and that's why we're doing this stay at home order, I guess, from the governor to make sure that we're not spreading it. Is that correct?
Yes, there was on the TV the other day, there was this really interesting picture. A physician was able to, it was almost like taking a tour into someone's lungs
Mm,
with the technology. You didn't see that. I mean, it was definitely a digital picture, but it kind of almost looked like a CT scan type of thing. And it showed where the coronavirus is in the lungs and what it's doing. And that was my aha moment for understanding the difference between the coronavirus and a flu, typically, or a pneumonia. When someone gets a pneumonia, it's generally in one lobe. One of your lungs has 3 lobes and one has 2. And a lot of times, one lobe will have an infection, and even that feels lousy. Unfortunately, with the coronavirus, it does not restrict itself to any area, and it can spread and impact your lungs in all areas at the same time.
mm. That's that's very,
Yeah.
very scary. But it's very good to know that as well in terms of what's actually happening in the body
Yeah.
with it. So there's been a lot of discussion about how we keep safe from this. Can you speak to those listening about in terms of proper hand washing or the social distancing that's happening? Again, why is that necessary or important? And is it important the
Hmm.
way we're washing our hands and interacting with people?
Absolutely. So the first thing I will say is general hygiene precautions. What those are things like frequent washing of our hands, and that's 20 seconds at a time, soap and water. Water first and then soap. Washing for 20 seconds all surfaces of the hand, not forgetting like between the thumb and the forefinger, not forgetting the nails. You can even use your palm of your hand to kind of get under your nails a little bit. And it's really important that we do that. Washing our hands, it does not have to be an antibacterial soap, because what we're trying to do there is grab the germs and literally wash them away. We're not trying to kill them on contact. We're trying to wash them off of our hands, flush them out. A hand sanitizer is something that you would use when your hands are not visibly dirty, but you don't have any ready access to soap and water. Then you would use hand sanitizer, again, getting all surfaces of your hand and your nails and then letting it dry.
And I've
So
heard like
that's
there's
the
a
first
certain,
thing.
oh, I'm sorry. It sounds like there's a certain percentage also of
Mhm.
alcohol that you have to have in those. Is that right?
Needs to be 60% alcohol or above. You can find that information on the ingredients of an alcohol bottle or on a hand sanitizer bottle.
Okay. And then speak to me about this dynamic of the purpose of again washing those germs away, the virus away from your hands, and
Mhm.
so that you're not touching your face. Because I'm understanding that that's a big issue here. Is that people have this tendency to want to touch our faces, and that's something we're not wanting to do right now, right?
It almost feels like touching our faces is like breathing, where we're not always conscious of it. Some of us have a habit of, when we're in a thinking pose, it's kind of I'm thinking kind of a thing going on there. It is super important not to touch our faces. And the reason is because the virus is going to get in through mucous membranes, basically. It's going to get in through your nose. It's going to get in through your mouth without proper care. It can affect the eyes. I just saw an article today about mild conjunctivitis also being a possible symptom to look for with
Mhm.
coronavirus. So that's why when you see the medical personnel, they have all of those areas covered on them. And it's super important. Now, there are different types of transmission, microbes. For this particular one, they believe that it is respiratory droplets. So droplets, literally meaning like a drop of water, but the tiniest microscopic sizes of these. Every time we exhale, there is moisture that we are exhaling. Imagine then if you're ill and you're coughing or sneezing, and the virus is being shed through that. And so we have this 6 foot or more rule because that distance should be far enough away from somebody if they did sneeze, cough, things like that. So now I've looked at this about the droplets, and there is discussion, there is belief that they can hang in the air for a few hours. So this is the other reason why it's not enough to just say, I'm going to go out, but I'll stay away from everybody. It's not enough to do that. You don't know if someone was right there, and I don't want to make everyone like paranoid, but I do want to help them realize that there are consequences to going out when we've been asked by medical professionals to stay home.
Yeah. That's an important point you're making. So how long does it stay, if it is airborne, how long would it stay alive, say, for example? You said it wasn't alive as a virus, but it
Hmm.
stays
Active.
active or
Yeah.
as a contagion, I guess.
Yeah. Um, the one of the things I saw was 2 to 3 hours in the air,
Okay.
and it's not like a. So there's droplet precaution, and then there's airborne transmission. So plastics and metals, it can stay on those surfaces for days, waiting for a new host. So they've recommended to us how to clean things in our homes or things that we've brought home personally. When we've had to go grocery shopping, we have been wiping down boxes, bottles, anything we've brought home with us. What we're using is important. There are approved cleaning agents for the coronavirus. There is a list on the CDC website, but kind of a down and dirty way of explaining it is bleach is known to be effective against the coronavirus. You can dilute it, and you need to dilute it to use it. If you're doing a gallon at a time, it's 5 tablespoons. If you are doing a quart, which is 32 ounces, it's easier to find those spray bottles, for example, that you can do. It's just 32 ounces with water and 4 teaspoons of bleach. And then I would make sure to safely mark your bottle that you're putting that in if you're going to keep it in like a spray bottle.
Right, and I know I think the CDC or other websites have shown, the need to not mix certain cleaners. I've seen that as well, because you can also create something maybe more toxic and harmful to you than the chance of even getting the coronavirus. So I think
Absolutely.
it's important for
Yes.
people to be researching the kinds of things they're using and cleaning. Um, can
Yes.
you speak to, and I appreciate you sharing that, particularly about the need for us to be aware of that, and the need for us to be, safe and clean, and the need to stay home. And I know that people have to go out and shop to get
Hmm.
food, but other than that, I mean, and I guess if you're in an essential service, is there any other area where people need to be going out?
Well, and yes, I think first of all, I think we need to get outside, physically, we need to
Right.
be outside because we're not meant to live in these little boxes that we call homes and not get the sunshine. There is also um, anecdotal information that vitamin D plays a part in protecting us against the coronavirus. Well, the way you get vitamin D is to go outside and get some sun, get some of that. That's also good for depression, and that's something, of course, that people are dealing with right now. Is some depression issues. So the vitamin D helps on those two fronts. So you definitely want to get out and get in your exercise, get in your vitamin D, see the beautiful trees and flowers that are blossoming right now. What other reasons would we need to go out? Some people need to go out because they have older family members or other vulnerable people in their lives that have no one else, and they're supposed to be caring for them.
So when we do go out, if we have to go out,
Hmm.
and it's just practicing good social distancing at those points as well. Is that correct? I mean, even I know a
All the
lot of people,
time.
yeah, people who are vulnerable in vulnerable positions, particularly older people, the impact on them, I think is really very need to be aware of that and cognizant of the
Hmm.
fact that we just simply can't be with them right now, and it's important that we do maintain that social distancing. Could you speak to the curve? Because I've heard about this in the news a lot
Hmm.
about the curve they're trying to basically flatten. And can you explain what that is to
Hmm.
people and why it's important to flatten the curve?
Yeah. So there's some wonderful posters online that people can see that explain that another difference between like the flu and the coronavirus is the transmission rate. And so with the flu, the average transmission is from one person to one person. But with the coronavirus, it goes from one person to two or three people. And then, so then you imagine those two or three people, if they get it, then they go and they each transmit it to two or three people. And then those people transmit it to two or three people. And that's why when we're looking, like in our own area or in the United States as a whole, we'll see a number and then it'll jump a little bit and then it'll jump a little bit, but it gets to a point where it's jumping a lot every day, every other day. Large numbers right now. We're up at I think 140,000 people in the United States right now. So we are expecting this. This is a virus that we have never had. So that's why it's called novel. It's a new virus. Nobody had immunity across the globe to this particular virus. That's why it's pandemic. It's all over and everybody's experiencing it. They're trying right now with flattening the curve. It's trying to avoid that sharp peak that's going to happen when you have the number of transmission increasing exponentially. Whereas if you slow the spread, then what we're trying to do is make sure that we have adequate resources, medical resources, for those who are going to be sickest and who are going to need them the most. We certainly, it's not going to change someone's risk or change how their body would react at this point, but if we are able to give more of an even hill versus mountain type of experience, then we can keep up with the demand with our health care. And that's where the struggle is, where we're seeing explosions of cases, like in New York City, for example.
Yeah. Well, and again, as I've seen it, the curve goes up, but then there's a line here that shows the kind of, like you said, resources that we have. And once you
Hmm.
get past this line, unfortunately, those are the people who are become casualties, I guess, if you will, because we don't have enough ventilators or we don't have enough ICU beds to
Hmm.
help people in those situations. So that's the whole point of why we're staying home, is to, like you say, flatten the curve, given the, I think, fairly healthy um, transmission rate that this virus seems to have. 1 to 1
Hmm.
you were saying for flu, and then this is 1 to 2 to 3 people as a
Hmm.
possibility. So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
is there anything that you'd like to maybe share to, you mentioned a little bit about mental health. How can we stay healthy, physically and mentally during this time of, I was talking about, even you're feeling a little bit of a monastic experience of being cloistered in here, living
Hmm.
with other people, but also just how do we stay healthy, again, physically and emotionally during this time?
Absolutely. So many things. We need to embrace this opportunity that we have to be with those that we're closest to and enjoy that time together. If you've always been meaning to put puzzles together with your family, you've always been meaning to play games, board games, things like that, now's the time to go ahead and do it. You've got the time now. Don't sit on your computer all the time. And speaking of that, you need to get up about every 50 minutes to an hour. You need to get up and stretch your legs, do ankle pumps and things. They have seen an increase in the number of blood clots and pulmonary emboli that people are getting, where the blood clots go to the lungs. And that's very serious. And here we have our hospitals trying to manage the number of folks that have the coronavirus. And if someone gets a blood clot, they need to be seen emergently. So again, that adds additional strain, but also it's a danger for you. So be sure, everybody, to be getting up, and don't just sit on that computer all day without breaks. It's very important. Exercise, you can do that at home. There's all sorts of ways to do that. Make up dances, make up a little route in your house, do a little family boot camp type of thing where you have to go to stations and do different, different exercise things. They have some fun ones for kids, the crab crawl and the frog leap and all those different things. Going for walks as a family. Bike rides are great. You can keep distance even with those. If you wanted to bike with a neighbor 6 feet or more apart, but biking is good, walking is good. Taking the doggies out, which I think they're all getting a little spoiled right now with everyone stuck at home. Those are some of the things that will help. The other thing, of course, is you have to eat correctly, eat well. You have to try to maintain a sleep schedule. I'm noticing an increase in acid reflux and an increase in digestive issues right now, particularly among middle to older adults. And I think it's stress related that this is happening. But while you are having those experiences, there are certain foods to avoid, or certain foods to have, of course, when you're having those problems.
Good. Well, Gina, thank you for the wealth of information you've shared with us. Again, those who are not familiar with faith community nursing, I think Gina embodies it best, and all the work and the commitment that you've made over the last decades about the important work that you've done. I sure appreciate it. I appreciate all that you do for our diocese and helping us. Gina, I'm asking folks to lead us in prayer. Would you mind leading us in a prayer for the families that are being touched by this?
Absolutely. Okay. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for the gift of family. We ask you to protect our families, those in our homes, those that are outside our homes, those that we are so worried about but unable to reach. Please give them a mantle of protection and health. Help decrease anxiety. Give them a sense of peace, a sense of control. Help them to look at the blessing pieces of our time at home and to not lose hope. This is the time to really fight for it. Lord, we thank you for every precious gift you give us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Gina, it's good to see you. God bless you, and
You too.
thank you for all that you do in our diocese. And I know we're going to get through this. This too shall pass. But I thank you for your medical expertise and helping people understand this better. So God bless you.
Thank you, Jay. Take
Thanks.
care. Bye-bye.